Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Failing is Not an Option, where we are all things family therapy, but not just for the exam. However, this video is specifically for the MFT National Exam. I want us to be able to look at any question that comes up and we can just look at it and tear it apart, find those distractors, look for those answer responses that is trying to trap us, those answer responses that are saying like, hey, hi, I'm over here, but that's not the one that you need to be paying attention to, because sometimes those very, very pretty responses are the ones that we need to be ignoring. Sometimes that ugliest response is the best answer. And let's take a look at how we're going to be able to do that. So here it is. The safety and ethics trap is one of the biggest ones, right? These questions is always going to at least broadcast something about abuse, someone that is being harmed, someone that may feel like they are afraid. They don't know what else it is they need to do. They feel like disappearing. They feel like they don't want to live anymore, right? Those are your like typical safety questions, but with safety also toes the lines with how we are ethically going to respond to them. So your questions regarding, like I just said, abuse, neglect, mandated reporting, harm, suicidal ideation, homicidal ideation, your ethical way you respond is always going to take priority over theory, intervention, and goals. If you come across a question that is mentioning any of things like that I just discussed, please don't choose an answer response that has you performing an intervention or something that is like theory based when it's clear that there is a safety issue that is occurring in that question, okay? Now, here it is. And this is just an example. It comes in so many different ways, right? A parent is admitting to physically punishing a child. Now, you may look at some of those answer responses and it may be something like, oh, teach parenting strategies, check in with the parent and see how they're doing this, ask the parent this. Don't start asking all of the questions when you know that there is a safety risk in the vignette. That is your distractor. It may seem like it's helping, but it's not. It's the wrong answer, because if you see an answer responses that have to do with a parent that is physically abusing a child, you need to look for an answer response that is going to pave way to keep this child safe. Sometimes those answer responses may not have the obvious words, phrases, terms that you are used to seeing. That doesn't matter, because now you know that that answer response needs to pave way to you protecting that child. Also, ethically, how you respond needs to also protect your license. If it protects the child, it protects your license. If it protects this other person, then it protects your license. That is the mindset that you need to have, because I know that if I handle this situation unethically, my license is on the line. This child may end up hurt. This child may end up dead. We also need to think like that. Ethics and safety will always come first over theory, interventions, in whatever case may be, okay? Now, your first questions, first, initial, in the beginning, present in therapy, those are like your first questions. And also, it's your stage of therapy questions. If you are in the early stages of therapy, please be mindful of an answer response that you are going to choose. Do not move too far advanced when you are just in the first step or the first stage, right? Some of the time the answer choices are going to suggest like there are interventions that are appropriate for later therapy. But if the question is first, do not do anything that has to do with the middle or the late stage of therapy. Pay attention. Does this question ask you for an initial, middle, or termination phase? Always make sure. Most times your first question is going to be, do I need to clarify this problem? Do I need to assess? Do I need to be joining with this family? Or if it is a safety question, your first and immediate response needs to be doing what? Making sure that that client is safe, protecting the client, protecting the child, protecting this other person, and protecting your license, right? So for an example, and they come in many different forms. The first session with the family is reporting sibling conflict. Now, some answer responses may be like, oh, assign a homework assignment, or do a paradox or a directive or something. That's middle stage. When you are in the first stage, you need to be looking for something where you're like just building rapport, you're gathering information, you're asking questions. Those are your first step of your stages of therapy. Pay close attention to how those questions are worded. Now, again, will those answer responses just come right out and just put the obvious out there? No, they won't. But you will be able to tell when it is first stage, middle stage, and late stage. You will be able to tell, is this something that I immediately need to be responding to? If it's safety, it is going to trump everything. Do not choose answer responses that has you ignoring that this person is in the first stage and there is also a safety issue in the question, okay? Now, this is what I see some people getting tripped up over, the confusion of the models. It is best that you know key terms, words, phrases, synonyms for any of these models. I remember when I was studying, I wanted to know synonyms, terms, phrases for all words that I looked up. So when it came time to the exam, it wasn't a word, phrase, or a term that they used that I didn't know what they were trying to do. That is the trick. There are going to be cues for specific models in the exam. But if you do not know or recognize what some of those terms are for and what theory they match to, it's going to do more harm than good. Now, here is the thing. Structural, Bowen, and narrative, those are your little simple little words and phrases that are tied to those models. But I will one up to you and I will tell you that each of those words that are up there are synonyms for them. There are other words that they use to describe them. There are other terms that they use to help you identify them. Don't just cheat yourself. Don't just stop there. Take it a tad bit further. Is there another word for boundaries? Is there another term for subsystems? Is there another term for hierarchy? Does structural therapy also talk about executive subsystems, sibling subsystem, boundary marking, boundary making? Is there other words for that? Is there another words for differentiation in triangles? 3-person triad, triads, dyads. Is there other words for that? I don't want this exam to trip you up at all, because when you see those words, you're going to be like, they're talking about Bowen, even though it's not the obvious answer that we are looking for. Okay, now just a simple example again, and they come in so many different ways. A therapist notices rigid boundaries and disengaged systems. Exploring internal relations, it sounds nice because it's talking about the relationships, which is the boundaries and the disengaged systems that we have within our family. But if this is a structural therapy question, you need to match an answer, which will be a structural therapy response. Enactment is a word that matches structural therapy. I think there was a question that we had in the group about structural therapy. I think the question was about an intervention that a structural therapist would do. I think a lot of people chose D because it talked about hierarchies, but it was a goal. Be mindful. Know your goals of structural therapy, Bowen, narrative, whatever the case may be. Know your interventions. So if that question asks you for an intervention, do not choose a goal. Look for those interventions. Unbalancing is an intervention in structural therapy, but everybody looked past that and only chose D because D spoke about hierarchies. That was your distractor. If you can point out those distractors, if you can pay attention to that trap that they're making for you, you will be able to find the best answer much quicker. This is the one that I cannot stand. A bunch of blah, 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 blah in the vignette. It's a bunch of information. It's a bunch of sentences that just keep going and going. They talking about the baby mama's drama. The baby's mama daddy had did this. The kid did this. The kid did that. The parent did that. It's a bunch of fluff. And then by the time you get finished reading all of that fluff, it's going to ask you a question that you probably didn't even need to read all of that just to find the best answer. Focus on the information that really sticks out to you and is going to lead you to the best answer. Always, always, always look for that problem. Who is involved and what is the stage of therapy that is possibly being presented? How many people that is in that vignette, especially when they're talking about a family, some way, somehow, that family is probably going to be included in that answer response. Stay away from individual answer responses when it's a family included, because we are family therapists. Hobbies, minor details that make no sense, that is not really big on you finding that best answer. Do not be too focused on it. Stay the course. Do not stray from the course. I don't care about what the dog did. What the dog did ain't got nothing to do with how I'm gonna handle you in therapy. Am I doing dog therapy? No, I'm not. I'm doing family therapy, right? So we look at that example: a dog misbehaving, parents report similar conflict. That information about that dog is just to have you like trying to probably distract you from finding that best answer. But no, stay the course. The dog can't do nothing for the family, okay? Unless it is an emotional support dog, then maybe we should be talking about something different. But if you take a look, focus on the dog's behavior. That's a trap when you need to be paying attention to the sibling conflict, because the sibling conflict is what is being discussed in the vignettes. Okay? Navigating longer questions can be hard, but you just need highlight people that's involved, the age, the presenting problem, quotation marks. Do not ignore quotation marks. Those quotation marks will probably be what's going to lead you to your best answer. This is one of the things that I have beef with. Overthinking and second guessing. The enemy. It is your worst enemy. Do not give energy to it. This exam is for you to think, not overthink. Do not try to apply any knowledge that is not there to try to lead you to your best answer. It's not going to happen. You making up all these scenarios and stuff in your mind, trying to get you to the best answer, it's not going to work, because what's in that vignette is what you have to use to find the best answer. What's in that vignette. That's it. That's all. You need to focus on what the question is actually asking you, not what you know about the scenario. Here is the thing. I've been telling people this as well. But it says this. I get that it says that, but that is not what the question is asking you. The question asks you, what should the therapist do? It has nothing to do with the client. Pay attention to questions like that. There may be questions where it's like, this question is not about the client, it's about the therapist. There was a question that came up, I think we used in a group. The therapist was working with a client who was also a substance user. He was using alcohol, and then the therapist eventually started drinking alcohol after every session. And then the question was, what is a therapist's next best step? I think people were really thrown by the termination aspect of it, and I'm just like, well, the question doesn't have anything to do with the client. It has to do with the therapist. The therapist is the one that needs to support. Sometimes the question may be like, oh, okay, it's about this, but then it's not about this. And you have to be ready and able to pay attention to that so that you can find the best answer. Take a look at this one. Parent briefly mentions past trauma, but child is currently acting out. Now, one of your trap answers, and I've been seeing people do a lot, do not dig in the past when you have a present issue. If you have present issues that are occurring right now, exploring something in the past may not help you find what's going on, unless it is a question that is focusing on working with these clients, getting them through their childhood traumas. Then yes, But if you have issues that are currently going on with this family, talking about childhood trauma is not going to help this family with this present issue that they have. Unless that question paves way to childhood traumas, childhood fragments that's been going on, then yes. But if a child or somebody is currently doing something right now, digging in the past is not going to help you. Be very mindful of questions like that. Now, this is how we are going to avoid traps. You need to start highlighting some of those words and phrases that are sticking out to you. The most things that are important is the ones that's going to lead you to your best answer, right? You need to always check for safety. Anything that is ethical, that's going to override anything. Theories, interventions, and goals is going to override that. The therapy stage is important. Pay attention to what the stage of therapy you're in before you start choosing how you're going to work with that client. Sometimes there's going to be questions where it's going to be a generalized question. You do not start giving homework assignments, doing anything that is actively with the client until the middle stage of therapy. If it is a solution-focused brief therapy question, one of the questions that has you like hit the ground running with interventions, then your mindset will be different. Because solution-focused brief therapy, you're doing interventions right from the start. That miracle question is as soon as probably when that client walk in the room, hey, you woke up tonight, whatever the case may be, you're going to hit the ground running with those interventions, okay? Irrelevant answers, extreme answers like always, never, or ignore, get rid of them. You are a therapist. You are never ignoring any behaviors or any situation that is going on with your client. Get rid of them. Anything that is irrelevant and doesn't have to do with the vignette, those are probably going to be your first main two you're going to get rid of. It's going to leave you with your last two. Your last two is going to be a distractor and a trap. The one that is probably the ugliest one that is rent might be the best answer. That prettiest one is trying to dress you up and take you out. Don't go for it. Practice those questions to train your eyes and your brain to spot it quickly. So that way you have more time if you want to go back. The whole thing about you studying the questions and the rationales is for you to start retraining your brain so that you can start thinking like this exam. The exam is meant to trap you. The exam is meant to trick you, but our brains are much smarter than that. We need to get as many points as we possibly can. Now, we're going to do some practice. I'm going to work through these questions as if we are taking the MFT National Exam. We are going to look at some of these traps, some of these distractors, and see how we are going to spot the difference in these answer responses so that we can find these answers quicker, okay? Now, first question, and we're treating this like it's the exam. They might be easy, but that's okay. A couple comes to therapy arguing constantly. The wife says that she wants a divorce. What should the therapist do first? Now, before we even look at some of those answer responses, go back. We got a couple. They're coming to therapy. It's the first session, right? The wife says she wants a divorce, but what should the therapist do first? A says teach the couple communication skills. Stop, because teaching someone in therapy is done in middle stage, not at the beginning. Right? B says explore the couple's goals for therapies. I like that, but let's take a look at the other ones. C says begin marital history taking. Now, again, there it is. It's nice and pretty, isn't it? Begin marital history taking. Because they started with that word begin because we know it's the first stage of therapy, but that's not your best answer. That's your trap. That's your distractor. D says normalize conflict in relationships. Here we go again with this normalize word. It sounds nice, doesn't it? Sounds nice and pretty, but we're not normalizing conflict. It ain't nothing normal about conflict in a relationship unless we're sitting there specifically talking about these are some things that we've been kind of like arguing over. These are some things that we're trying to get through. But none of that is mentioned up there because first of all, they come into therapy and they constantly arguing, and the wife wants a divorce. Well, what does the husband want? We don't know that, right? So your best answer here is going to be to explore the couple's goals for therapy. What do you want? Right? What is it that you need? What do you want out of therapy? That's the first thing that we need to do before we start talking about taking some history down and trying to teach them something. Makes sense? Okay. A client asks if you can write a letter to help them in a custody case. What should you do first? Now, let's go back and look. Do we write letters for custody cases? Yes, no, if you know how to. I mean, hey, if it's part of your job description, then yeah, go ahead and do it. But what are we doing first though? Just because a client asks you don't mean you're gonna do it, right? A says, write the letter as requested. Lady, I don't even know what this letter is for. I don't know what you even got going on, so how am I write this letter for you? B says, refer the client to a custody evaluator. That's a bit much when we don't even know what this letter is for, right? What are we talking about? We're talking about your son or your daughter? You want the kid, or does your husband want the kid? Right? We don't even know. So, right, C says, review legal and ethical responsibilities with the client. It sounds nice. Let's look at the other one. D says, explore the client's reasons for the custody concerns. Now, here's the thing right here. The client asks you a question to write you a letter. Is you gonna do it or not? Right? What I need to give you reasons for? I want my kid, right? But C says, review the legal and ethical responsibilities with the client. That is the first thing that you need to do, because if we're working with this client, we don't typically do custody evaluations. So now we need to review these legal and ethical responsibilities with the client before you can even proceed with talking about this letter that this client wants you to write. See, those other ones are just your distractors. Refer the client to a custody evaluator for what? I don't even know what you want me to write in this letter. What, you want me to write a bunch of lies? Think that way. Make it make sense. Okay, this is the last one. Jordan, a marriage and family therapist, has been in recovery from alcohol use of several years. Jordan begins working with Alex. This is the question I was talking about. A client receiving treatment for substance abuse. During the course of therapy, Jordan notices increased cravings after sessions, and the therapist is now starting to drink on its own. Which of the following actions should Jordan take first? Now, if we go back and we take a look, so we have Jordan, he's an MFT. He's in recovery from alcohol, but now he's working with a client who is in treatment for substance use, and now Jordan in cravings are increasing, right? And he's even starting drinking again. So what is the following actions that Jordan should take first? Here's the thing. A says to terminate services with Alex immediately. I know someone chose this answer and asked me about it, and I told them this question was not about the client. This question was about the therapist. And that's also client abandonment. Right? B says seek immediate consultation and supervision to address countertransference and ethical concerns. Okay. C says enter treatment to address the relapse in alcohol use. Okay. D says share these experiences with Alex to build rapport. D is an automatic that you get rid of. B and C, these are your last final two that you come to, but one of them is a distractor, because B says to seek immediate consultation and supervision. Here is the thing about B. That's not enough to help. He's in recovery. Now he's relapsing. He needs to enter treatment. B is not enough. That supervisor cannot help and treat him with his relapse in alcohol use. He needs to go into treatment. Supervision to address countertransference and ethical concerns. I get that. That's all nice and pretty and all, but him seeking consultation is not enough. He's drinking every single day after he leaves session with this client. That's a heck of a lot of countertransference that supervision is not going to help with. I hope that makes sense to each and every one of you. I hope you find that this video has laid some things out for you and put some things in perspective. And if it hasn't, leave me a message. Leave me a comment with your concerns and any questions, and I'm going to be here to help you. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday afternoon.